Hey, this is Richard with 24toDouble, and we've got something really exciting planned for you today. What you're going to see today is an excerpt from one of our modules on Followup. Now, just for a moment, I want you to think about this. Think about how much effort you, as the pastor, put into just getting somebody to come to your church for the first time. Maybe you plan a sermon or even a sermon series around the idea of getting people in your church to invite their friends or their coworkers or their family members, and then you execute on that plan with the big call to action being, hey, here's why you should invite your friends to church or your family to church. And then that person, they take that information and they go into their lives and they start looking around for people that they can invite and they can share not just your church, but Jesus with, right? And then they find somebody and they begin to invest their time, right? They invest their energy, their moments, and they're looking for opportunities to invite and to invest. And sometimes that can happen pretty quickly. Most of the time, however, you and I both know it may take months or even years for that opportunity to arise for the congregant to be able to invest in that person and plant seeds long enough that they've earned the right to invite them into a very personal part of their lives. So let's say that all that happens, right? And they take time and they get them there and they come to church. And let's just say, for instance, that Sunday you're on, that the Holy Spirit is moved and you nail it. Maybe your best sermon ever, right? And then this is the question I would have for you. What happens next? Now in 24toDouble, we've got about 350 churches that are active right now, and I'm talking to you guys all the time. And here's what I found, is that this is the one place where, as a whole, we're dropping the ball. We spend all this effort getting somebody there the first time, and then almost no effort to get them back. So what we're going to do in this module, in this excerpt, is we're going to talk to you about what you need to do to be excellent in your follow-up. So think about this. Over the next year, if you have 100 people visit your church, now that may be a huge number for you, and it may be really small for you, but let's just say that out of the next 100 people that visit your church, how many of them come back? Well, the national average says 6 of them, 6 to 9. That the average church, the retention rate for first-time visitors is somewhere between 6 and 9%. And that's just not good enough. Now, in this training, Jerry's going to talk to you about what you need to do to get that number up to 25, 30, maybe even 40%. And just think about what that means over the next year, the next 2 years. That means instead of growing by 20 people out of 200, you may grow up to 60 or 80 people out of 200 people, which is awesome for you and your church, right? But for those people, that could be all the difference in the world. So hang in there and check out the video. And again, this is an excerpt from 24toDouble, which is a 2-year church growth program. And we're giving you excerpts so that you can get a good idea about what 24toDouble is, how it works, and how it might work in your church. So for more information on that, you've come to the right place. You can scroll down to the page while you're watching the video and find out everything you need to know about 24toDouble. And then the other thing is, right after you sign up, we're going to ask you to call a meeting with your cheerleaders, the people in your church that you know will get behind whatever it is God calls you to do, and just have an hour-long meeting with them. We'll give you an agenda for it and just talk about, how are we doing at being the church? And hopefully, even if you decide not to partner with us at 24toDouble, that conversation could start something in your church. So go ahead and check us out, enjoy the video, and I'll talk to you a bit at the end. Thanks.
All right, so here's what we're really here to talk about tonight. And that is retention. We're going to talk about the key components of retention, which are assimilation, a follow-up process, thirdly, the discipleship process, and then what does it look like when someone's assimilated in our church, all right? So the importance of assimilation is based on Acts 2 and 46. It just says, every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes, and they ate together with glad and sincere hearts. All right, so really, we're going to take this verse, and we're going to break it down little by little. We're going to walk through what that process looks like and how that verse is built into the steps of 24toDouble, all right? I love this statement. David Fry, I think is how you say his name, David Fry, says, not following up is the same as filling up your bathtub without first putting the stopper in the drain. And churches are doing that all the time. A lot of people come through the door and we're so excited and they smile at us, but we don't follow up and they just kind of get lost. And 2 or 3 weeks later, somebody says, what happened to that nice couple? They seem to really love it. I talked to them out there. What was it, Bob? And then they're just gone. I mean, we've had that conversation hundreds of times, and it's because we've not been following up. So we start with the Acts 2 question. Remember what happened in Acts 2? 3,000 people were converted at one time and joined the church. What would you do tomorrow if 3,000 souls were added to your church? What would you do with them? How would you tie them in? The only thing we are absolutely certain that we would do if 3,000 people were added to the church is receive an offering. Can you say amen? That's what we know for sure we would do. We don't have a small group for them to get involved in. We don't have enough classrooms to do it. That's the reason why really, if your church really is going to grow and really is going to become a discipling engine for years to come, you're going to have to think about small groups. Because if 3,000 people came to your church, you don't have enough Sunday school rooms for 3,000 people, and you're not going to. And that's what killed Sunday school at Daystar, is we just simply ran out of space. And you run out of space, you run out of money before you run out of space, so you can't build enough space. So we had to go to a different model. But have we thought about that? Have we thought about what to do with these people? Have we thought about how to bring them back in? This is a model that we're going to work on to help make that happen. So what's assimilation? Real simply, assimilation is helping newcomers become active, ongoing participants in the life of the church. That's all it is. Here's what an assimilated member looks like. It's someone who attends worship regularly, participates in a meaningful group. That could be Sunday school, could be, in the choir, it could be a small group. They have an identifiable role or task. They have something to do. They serve in some way. They have a consistent percentage of giving. And the only way for you to know that, pastors, if you're watching, you have to take a look at where the overall health of the church is. If Jesus talked about giving, about half the time that he was, sharing parables, it had something to do with money or possessions. If that was important enough for him to share that time, then we probably ought to be looking at this as one of the components of assimilation and membership. Next, they call the church my church, and they've made several friends. And this statement by Gary McIntosh just kind of fulfills what we've been saying here and teaching. He says assimilation means recognizing each person's unique gifts, talents, and personality, and helping them make friends and find a place to belong and serve. Well, that's exactly what Pastor's Breakfast does, and the growth track that we're also teaching. All right? So assimilation, it begins with vision, but it's got to have movement to it. So let's take just a couple minutes to look at this graphic I put on the screen here. You can see there are arrows here. Lance drew this up, and we talked a lot about this to show you visually where this movement is happening. All right, we're seeing on this vision statement, love God, love people, serve the world, and I think that comes straight out of the book Simple Church. Love God, love people, serve the world. There are 3 steps in the assimilation process. So first of all, if they know those 3 little phrases, love God, love people, love the world, then they ought to be able to tell immediately where they are in the process. Am I in step 1, step 2, or step 3? This is beautiful because it's not just a purpose statement, it's also a process statement. You get the difference? The purpose is, we want to love, what is our purpose on this earth? To love God, to love people, and serve the world. That's the purpose part of it. What is the process? Well, the process means step 1, step 2, step 3. So it's a process statement in that step 1 is what? Shout it out. Love God, right? That's step 1. Am I in the love God step? That's step 1. Step 2 is love people. Step 3 is what? Serve the world. So you can not only know that these are the 3 things our church stands for, but you can also see these are the 3 steps I should be working through in my life. Love God, love people, serve the world. Now back to the graphic. Under love God, you can see what I'm doing if I'm in step 1. Am I consistent in worship? Have I had a personal salvation experience? Have I been baptized before the body? Am I praying on a regular basis? That's step 1. I'm in the love God step. Then I build on that and I move forward to the love people step. Am I in a small group, a life group? And this is kind of built around what we do at Daystar. We have freedom classes that help you, move forward and being set free from problems in your life. A retreat. We have retreats. We have, different men's retreat, women's retreat, marriage retreats, those kind of things. And then service projects. That's sort of the loving people part. That's the middle component. And the most important part of that middle component is being in a small group. That's the most important. Then the third step, you see there is, am I serving the world? And that's serving on the dream team, giving generously. And then we have something called a leadership advance, where people who are in higher levels of leadership are invited away to a leadership advance. And then, of course, there's mission trips. All right? So just looking at that, you can see that if you're really going to become assimilated into the church body, you need to see the vision. You know, people will rally behind vision. I've seen people rally behind what I would call a subpar vision, really a lot of times. I mean, something that just doesn't light my fire, doesn't really get me all motivated and excited about it. But the fact is, it's their church. It's the place they met the Lord. It's their pastor who's talking about it, and he's passionate about it. And people will, I mean, passion, it's like, it is like an infection. It will just, if you're passionate about it as a key leader and you're sharing that vision, they want to get on board with that. But here's what people cannot get on board with: confusion, lack of clarity. What's this church about? What's going on? I recently had a newcomer to our church in some of our meetings, and she just said, you know, I'm not real clear on the vision of the church. It made me mad. It just made me mad that she said that. But there is no recourse. Her opinion cannot be challenged. If she doesn't know what the vision of the church is, it is 100% my fault. I just started thinking of all the different times I've said vision and what I've talked about. And I just wanted to defend myself, you know. But there is no defense to that. If anyone sitting in the house does not know what the vision of your church is, there is no recourse, there's no argument, there's no discussion or no debate. It is the senior leader's fault and the senior leader's team's fault. We have got to share vision better. That's just flat out. I just went back and said, okay, we're going to do better at it. And I visioned that place so hard. I mean, about a month later, a different newcomer to our church, walked up to me, and a very strong Christian lady, I mean, ministry leader in our community for years, just started coming to Daystar. She said, you know, Pastor, I've just decided, before coming here, I've never been to a church that had vision before. I went back and told our staff, because I had just told them how horrible we'd been doing on vision, 6 months ago. Now, you have to, well, Andy Stanley said it best. He said, vision leaks. Think about that statement. Vision leaks. It's like a bucket that's got a crack in the bottom of it. You fill it up, and you are so sure your vision, you've prayed about it, you've talked about it, you're casting vision, and the next time you look at that bucket, it's halfway empty because vision leaks. You got to keep pushing it, keep pushing it, keep pushing it. Rick Warren says every pastor should be recasting vision every 30 days. Every 30 days. Keep telling me why we're doing what we're doing. And I don't remember the business leader, but Lance can tell us, but I remember him quoting a business leader who was talking about casting vision over the business. And he said, when you have your inner circle so tired of hearing about the vision that they become physically sick when you talk about it, and the next circle on the outside is so tired of hearing it that when you start talking vision again, they just start going, oh, God. He said, that's when you have probably reached the outer circle of people with vision. That's how much you need to talk about vision. So you can't talk enough about it. And why does that fit assimilation? Because people are not going to get assimilated because you said get assimilated. That's not a very encouraging statement. Why don't you get assimilated? Why don't you join the church? Why don't you make a commitment to tithing? They're not going to do that. You can preach about, hey, you ought to tithe, you got a lot of money. That never works. People only respond to vision. And so everybody's got to be casting it. Pastor, church leaders, ministry leaders, volunteers, everybody's got to be speaking the same voice, sharing the same vision. That's what makes assimilation happen. Now, what I'm going to do for the rest of this time is I'm going to teach specific things that we do to make assimilation happen. But I want you to understand, you can't do this like a robotic thing and expect it to happen. It all gels around casting a compelling, passionate vision for the church. That's most important. Everybody's got to be casting vision all the time. Okay, moving on. All right, so we're talking about assimilating people. We're going to think about how many first-time attenders that we have. So if a church is in maintenance mode, you got about 3 FTAs for every 100 attenders. You can go home and find out what mode you're in. Do the math. If they have about 5 FTAs for every 100, that's a steadily growing church. That's where you want to be. If the church is rapidly growing, then for every 100 people, you might have 7 to 10 first-time attenders, and that's in crazy growth mode. And we've been there before. It's an exciting place to be. All right? So let's calculate the retention rate. in a church of 100, everybody can do the math on this. If you're a church of 50, cut it in half. If you're a church of 200, double it, and so on and so forth. If the visitor percentage ratio is at 5 to 100 that we just talked about, then this Sunday there's 5 visitors in the church, and praise God for that. Now, we've got to make sure we're working on getting them back, right? So if we're doing a really good job, then we're getting 25% of them to come back. So then there's going to be one of those visitors back next week. Don't feel bad that you lost the other 4, all right? The other 4, maybe they weren't planning on coming back. Maybe they were visiting from out of town. Maybe they go to another church and they were just there because someone asked them to come to a special event. If you get 1 out of 4, you're doing a good job. I mean, there's really, as much as goes into church growth and all the talk, there's really just 2 things you got to get right to get the church to grow. That is, you got to get visitors to show up. Work on that number of how many visitors are in the house. And number 2, you got to get visitors to come back. Work on that number. There's 2 numbers. If you get your FTA attendance number up and you get your FTA retention number up, your church is going to grow. Doesn't matter what kind of church it is. Doesn't matter what denomination it is. Doesn't matter how good a preacher, how good singers there are, what the facilities look like. It's going to grow if you can work on those 2 things. And that's what this session's about, so this is a good time to be here. All right, so if that pattern continues for a year, you're having that 5 visitors, you're keeping 1 every week, then you've grown by 52 people in a year. How many think that's pretty cool? You got 100 people this time last year, now you got 152 people. Now what happens is the annual loss factor is 6%, so 6% are going to leave. Doesn't matter how good you are, pastor, if you turn water into wine, 6% are leaving. I mean, if you were up there floating across the platform, speaking, the most powerful word since Christ, somebody's not going to like it. Just get with it. You getting paid too much, or you point your fingers at people when you preach. There's something you do wrong, and they are going to leave. Come on, preacher, say amen. That's going to happen. So that's all right. Don't get heartburn over that. All right, so then the role to task ratio. All right, the role task ratio is 30 people involved in some kind of a role for every 100 people. Then if that's true, then in a year we've got 12 new people involved over 12 months. And the small group ratios, we're going to have 7 small groups for every 100 people. Now we've got 3 new small groups. So that's exciting. And it's going to help also, the staff ratio is 1 staff member for every 150 people. So we've hired somebody now because of these new people coming. The attendance ratio, in a smaller church, you can get 87 seats filled for every 100 seats available. And so if a sanctuary seats 200, then in 6 months, you've grown so much, you're going to have to expand or move or go to 2 services or plant another church, and that's pretty exciting, isn't it? So this is the way this thing works when we get it to working well. And really that's how it has worked for Daystar Church. We started out with less than 100 people, and we started learning these principles, and we started working, and before long, we had to move to the grocery store building that we were in down in Dodge City, and we bought 300 chairs. Before long, we had to buy another 100 chairs and fill that room up. And before long, we had to tear something out so we could put another 100 chairs. And we had 500 chairs. And then we had to go to 2 services. And then we had to go to 3 services. And then we built this building. And it's just by doing these simple principles right there, just those simple things of figuring out who's in the building for the first time and making sure we follow up and tell them we want you to come back. I mean, those 2 simple things, very important. So if we begin with the end in mind, we want to think about the experience that we want the person to have before they get there. W. Edwards Deming says, if you can't describe what you're doing as a process, then you don't know what you're doing. That is so true. What happens? What happens when a person walks through the building? What happens when they drive on the property? What is the process that they're going through? Well, Sister Lucy, she's always out there and she smiles and she's so good, she knows everybody. That's not a process. That's not working, okay? We've got to have a real process in place that works if Sister Lucy's there or if Sister Lucy's not there. It's got to work all the time. That's why we gave you this big old honking sheet of paper, all right? First time experience to Daystar is what we call this. And Lance made this because he just loves this kind of stuff. He wakes up in the night dreaming about spreadsheets like this. And this tells everything that a person can know about that process. Now, I won't read all this because it's cold outside and you'll go to sleep on me, all right? But it takes all the steps. Let's just, if you're looking at one of these or if you're close by to someone who has one, I'll just take one. Just take a look at one of them. So let's go to step number 1, top left. Who's doing this? The parking leader is doing this. What is he doing? He's going to identify the vehicle as an FTA or a regular attendee as they enter the parking lot and direct accordingly. Where is that happening? Main entrance to the front parking lot. When is he doing this? 30 minutes before and 15 minutes after service starts. Why is he doing this? He wants to separate FTAs and park them in the main front parking lot so that we can give them special attention. How is he going to do this? Because he has a vest and a name tag. You see that? Who, what, where, when, and how. We break that whole process down. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you can see all the way down to the back of the page. We get all the way down to inviting those people back to pastor's breakfast. All right. So this is a great resource for you. It's also in the booklet, but it's so small it'd be really hard to see it. All right. So let's move on. Team approach to retention. There are 3 steps here, and this is really what we're here to talk about tonight. These 3 steps to keeping those people there. It's the care ministry, it's the pastor's breakfast, and it's the growth track. We want to get those 3 things happening. Let's break these down. All of it happens through Team 5, the follow-up team. And here's our vision: to provide the love and acceptance and friendliness and compassion of Christ to the guest first. Why is it first to the guest? Because a regular attender is as saved as Billy Graham, right? So we've got to reach out to that lost person. We want to treat every person who walks through the doors of our church, particularly every first-time attender. You need to get that care team to see that person as the prodigal son. And we are the Father waiting on him. That's who we are. Dr. Weston says, treat the front door as the gates of heaven. What will happen when you enter the gates of heaven? Well, you think you'll be trying to open the door, but you can't get in because Brother Bobby is talking to Brother Jones about the hunting trip they went on, and they've got their back turned to the door, and they don't notice you're trying to walk in. Is that going to happen when you get to heaven? No, it's not. That door is going to come flying open. It doesn't say it in the Bible. I just believe I'm not going to have to open the door. I can't see myself. Are you going to pull the door up? Can you imagine this? You know, maybe the door to heaven, like the front door of Daystar, maybe there's 3 sets of double doors, right? And you get ready to pull that door open, and the usher forgot to unlock the door you're pulling on. Is that going to happen in heaven? Say no out loud. Come on, y'all can do it. No. So get the door unlocked. You know what I'm saying? It's so important that we see it that way, and we see that person as the prodigal son. So what that means is we're looking for them. We're looking for that person. I can remember, I kind of instinctively always felt that way. I can remember when I was pastoring my first church. I was in college, and it was the pastor just left the church. And I just showed up, and they said, "You're a preacher, aren't you?" And I was like, "Well, sort of. Will you preach?" And so I just did. And then they said, "Can you keep doing that for a while?" And it was ridiculous. I was 19 years old, and I was the pastor there for about 6 months. But I can remember, wanting more people to come. And I can remember standing at that door, greeting people as they came in and welcoming them there. And I just kept waiting on people to come. We had like 10 people, at tops. And I can remember looking down at my watch one day, and it's like 10 minutes after church was supposed to start. I'm still standing at the door, and I thought, how sad did I look to all those few church members I had who were thinking the poor old pastor's expecting someone else to come, and they're not, right? Well, you need to take that same, not sad, but that same approach of peering out that glass and saying, there's a lost prodigal on his way, and I'm here for him. I came today for him. I didn't come to talk about the ball game, and aren't you glad that team lost so we can. I didn't come for that. I came for that lost person. That's my passion. That's my heart. And that's who I'm looking for. And so when they come, man, I'm going to elbow past the regular attenders, and I'm going to, go right around that other guy so that I can love on the person who's come through these doors. Because if a person comes through these doors, Ken House said, he says, visitors are not visitors. Visitors are miracles disguised as needs. I believe that. People don't come to your church because they just decided, hey, why don't I just go to church? They only came because something went wrong. You need to know that. The only reason they came to your church is something went wrong. If they've decided, I'm not going to go to church, I don't need God in my life, life's pretty good without God, they're not going to come because you handed them a card. They may choose your church because you handed them a card, but they've chosen to come to a church because something went wrong. Something about their whole lifestyle that says, I don't need God, or I don't need church, or church is a bunch of whatever they thought. Something went wrong, and they decided, I do need God. I got a bad doctor's report. or things are just not going right in my marriage. That's why they came. Well, Pastor, no, they came from another church. Something went wrong at that church, and they're just as wounded, maybe sometimes more wounded than the lost person. If they come through that door and you've never seen them before, you need to know that's a miracle waiting to happen, and it's your call to go to them. All right? It's got to begin with vision. It's got to begin with who our heart is and who our heart is going out to. It can't begin with, did I follow, the fastest way to kill the passion of your follow-up team is to throw this thing at them and say, are you following that? That will never, and you know what? We've majored on this too much, and in the interest of full disclosure, we've spent too much time on this and not enough time on vision. You got to pour your heart, pour the vision of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish into them. And oh, by the way, here's a good resource to help you. If this is 80% and vision is 20%, it will fail miserably. Vision's got to be 80%, and how to do it has got to be 20%. Are you hearing my heart? All right, I'm visioning you up tonight, so I hope you're getting it. All right, so here's some more of that stuff about how it comes together. The fivefold team structure is in place. I've talked about this a whole lot, and so if you have questions about this, I'll let you ask me a little bit later. Here's a little statement from Jim Collins that I'm not in love with, so I'm not going to read it. Although Lance is telling me that on the back screen that it was Jack Welch who talked about vision, and that you're supposed to, in a business, you talk about vision until the person is sick to their stomach. They're so tired of hearing it. That was Jack Welch who said that. All right, let's talk about the follow-up, the job description of a person doing follow-up. So here's the principal function: to show the love of Christ to the FTA, help the FTA feel accepted and appreciated by the church, answer any question that the FTA may have. We want people with the gift of encouragement, mercy, and helps and services. That's really who we want out there, okay? If you've got a person who's just, super gifted with administration or the gift of ruling, they're going to walk the FTA in and say, okay, what I need you to do is follow all these steps, and that's not going to work, okay? So let's find a person with the gift of encouragement to be on that front door, inviting people in, and also following up on those people. Now, there is a myth out there that says the majority of guests want to be left alone when attending church. Truth is, 15% of guests would prefer to be hidden, but that means 85% are still undecided. And so your church can earn the right for that guest to return. That's according to Ken House in the book, You Are a Miracle Waiting to Happen. So that's follow-up. Follow-up is how you earn the right to bring that person back. Let's go to the job description. The responsibilities of follow-up. We want to assign care team members to greet in the auditorium before service. You understand this is in here, not just out there. Assign care team members to greet in the lobby also, and escort tours. Now, we get that a lot here. Just this weekend, I had 2 families that I noticed personally who were new to the church and wanted to just tour the building. Can we tour the building? Yeah, here's Bob. Bob will walk you around. Another family wanted to tour. They're new to the town. They found out we had a preschool. They wanted to come to church and tour the preschool. So, have people out there willing to just kind of show them around. Number 3, at a designated time, care team members should distribute and pick up FTA cards. Now, I think we've gone into this in pretty good detail, but what we use in a smaller church environment, we don't do that exactly the same way here at Daystar, but in a smaller church environment. In fact, at Daystar's North Campus in Hartselle, we do it the way we're teaching it here, where we literally walk down the aisles and we hand them that FTA card. That way we get the privilege of picking up that FTA card, and then we know where that person is, so that when the service is over, the person who handed the card and picked up the card can go back and say, hey, didn't I give you a card? If you're a first-time guest, if you got 2 minutes, I'd love to take you by and introduce you to the pastor. I'm Jerry, and I know him, so you got a couple minutes? And that's really a nice, smooth, easy way to do that. Now, you have to train in how that's done, because that can be done poorly. And if it's done poorly, it can be intimidating or just kind of be a little bit weird. But if it's just real light, hey, I'm new here. I thought I saw you get that card. Seems like you're new here, and I've been coming a while. I'd like to just take a minute and introduce you to the pastor. If you got a couple minutes, that should not be offensive to anyone. Now, if you've got somebody who doesn't understand it and they just, hey, I'm supposed to bring you to the preacher. Well, that's not going to work, all right? And then people are going to be talking about you around town and, talking about crazy stuff that you do. So don't do that. Gary McIntosh says something really well in his book, Beyond the First Visit. He says, many churches use the institutional approach to follow up. They focus on what the church needs rather than caring for the guest. It's important that the guests receive or perceive that the church is interested in their needs. So that follow-up should be about them. Shouldn't be about, hey, we really want you to join our church. This is the best church in town. You're not going to find a better church anywhere. Come on out. We've got the best children's ministry. That's not the way you need to do follow-up. Follow-up needs to be, a phone call or some kind of contact that says, hey, I met you at church yesterday, and remember I introduced you to the pastor, and I was just praying for you today, and that's part of what I do with first-time guests. And I noticed your prayer card, said you've got some surgery coming up. I just wanted you to know I'll be praying about that. And if you want to tell me what day it is, I'll be sure to pray on that day. Now, who doesn't want that? Anybody wants that. Nobody wants, somebody calling with a hard sell, would you come to my church? Would you join my church? Are you going to come back next week? That's not going to work, okay? So this is this idea of calling the person back within the first 24 hours, it's a pretty invasive approach. And if it's done well, it's very disarming and very welcoming, and people will care about it, all right? So teach your care team members this. They should know that speaking is the second element of communication, really. 38% of communication is in the tone of the voice. That's the second element. The first element, though, 55% of communication is in the body language, how I'm talking, If I'm kind of, if I'm all up in your personal space, say, hey, pastor wants to meet you, that's just terrible. It doesn't matter what you said because you're all up in my face and I don't know you. But if I'm just kind of lighthearted and disarming, that's going to be really easy. And according to this study, only 7% of communication is actually in the words that you say. All right, so know that. Also, Ken Houpt says care teams should avoid public embarrassment by quietly and privately identifying visitors in their assigned sections. Remember, public speaking or communication ranks as the highest fear among average people. So if you're, hey, raise your hand if you're a newcomer, stand up and tell us where you go to church. Well, they got to make up something. I go down there to that Fountain of Grove Baptist Church down there, they have to make up something. They don't want to do that, so don't single those people out. Now, here's some other ways you can get information. Right here, potential collection points, prayer request card, a salvation card, a new guest card, a new giver's information. And here's one of the best, children's check-in. All right, now, and of course, care team. Now, you can get information from the children's check-in that you can't get any other way. People don't want to give you information, but they value the fact that you're taking information if you're taking their children. That lets them know that you're on top of your game, that you're not going to give their kid away to the wrong person. So even in an age where people are getting more and more secretive about their information, they will give you information around their children. So that's a great resource for you to use. One of the things I have my children's pastor to give me is every month, give me a trending attendance report from the children's ministry. And I don't mean how many people are in there, but I want to know the names of the people who are absent. All right, so if little Johnny Smith has been out for the last 4 weeks, I'm going to go talk to little Johnny Smith's mom and daddy and see what's going on. Because they may be checking out on us. They might be going through a hard time and they're not going to church, or there may be something else like that. There's really 2 ways, pastors, you can really see if somebody's kind of in what I would call the intensive care unit of your church. They need you to respond personally. Is check the attendance in children's church and also check the giving record. Because giving is the last thing to come and the first thing to go. Never forget that. Giving is the last thing to come and the first thing to go. When they're checking you out, they're kicking the tires at your church, they're thinking it's a pretty cool church, I think we'll come back. They're not giving yet. Most of the time, they're not giving. When they start really giving, that's when you know, yeah, they're here. They believe in this place. And before they leave, 99% of the time, they'll stop giving. They'll give a little bit, don't give a little bit, and then they just quit. And they're just disenfranchised. Things aren't going well. They're not happy with the church. Well, you need to know that. And if you'll follow the giving record and you'll follow the children's church attendance, that'll give you a better picture of what's going on in the heads of people. And so it may be someone that you know and you can personally respond to, or it may be someone that someone else in your team can respond to. That's a great way to hold on to people who are already part of your church. All right, let's continue talking about the follow-up process. We assign each FTA to a care team member. We let the Holy Spirit lead who is going to follow up with that person. We provide each team member with a copy of that FTA prayer card and a map to the person's home and a gift to give them the gift. The care team member will visit or call within 24 hours. Now, we teach it this way. We don't, in the interest of full disclosure, we don't do it this way anymore. Our church has people that come from many counties, and people used to drive to Birmingham to drop off little mugs for people, and that was wonderful, but really it became to a point of a diminishing return for us. If I were starting a new church today and starting over with a smaller group of people, this is the model I would follow. I know people are saying it's crazy. Nobody wants you knocking on their door. I'm just saying we've done it a lot, and people have been overwhelmingly positive about it. And so if you can do it, then I think that's great. If you can do it, that's great. But it's kind of your own call. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that, on a given weekend, Daystar's going to, 50 homes passing out coffee cups, because we don't do that anymore. It's become prohibitive for us to do that. All right? So here's some of the responsibilities. We want them to follow up by calling or visiting just briefly. And again, focus on the FTA. Don't focus on the church. Focus on that person. Comment about the prayer concerns that they listed on the card or any other notations they made. They said that I'm new to the area. Hey, I noticed you're new to the area. Are your kids in school yet? Can I give you information about the schools? I noticed that you mentioned that you want to be involved in a small group. Hey, I'm in a small group. I'd like to invite you to mine. Or if you don't want to come to mine, let me connect you with our small group pastor. He can tell you which group. So you want to follow up that way. Number 7, if the FTA has any questions, the care team member will try to answer them, but don't make up the answer. Please don't make up the answer. The FTA says, yeah, what I've really been wanting to know is, do you guys believe in the premillennial second coming of Christ, and is it pre-trib, mid-trib, or post-trib? Don't give them a dissertation on that. Say, you know what? You should ask the pastor the answer to that question. All right? Please don't do that. If they're not able or comfortable with the question, they refer them to the church staff to provide the correct answer and inform them someone will call them within 24 hours. Now, we'll call them within 24 hours, won't we? Say amen. Come on, these are the people we're in the business for. We will absolutely call them within 24 hours. Number 8, the FTA does not answer. Leave a message stating that we appreciated them visiting the church, and if there are any questions, they should contact the church. Number 9, if the FTA is not at home, leave the handwritten note and the gift at the door. Leave a message and state how we appreciated them visiting and that we left you a gift. All right? Number 10, once the visit is complete, report any positive or negative feedback to your team leader. Number 11, immediately turn in the information to the office so that it can be put through our administration, and make sure the pastor has sent out a letter. All right? And I think we've given you guys our FTA letter that goes out. It's a card now instead of it being a letter, because a letter looks like a bill and nobody's excited about getting that letter. So we've made them into card forms, and we get those printed, and then I personally sign each of them and put a little note. If they said something about that they needed prayer for, I'll make a note about what we're praying about. And then we get together with our staff and leaders, and we do pray over those needs because all liars go to hell. And if you sign a card that says you prayed, you better pray, because I don't want you to go to hell. I love you too much for that. Number 12, give an FTA list to the pastor so that he can contact these in the next couple of weeks. Again, that varies by church size. If I was starting a new church, I might be the person doing that. I don't personally do that now. Number 13, when all forms are turned in, all responses are put in the comment section of the new visitor name in the computer system, and we track that FTA until they're involved in ministry.
Well, hey, I hope you really enjoyed this video, and I hope more than anything that you do something with something that you heard in this video. Again, the difference between 9% and 25%, all of that's great and everything. The difference between 9 people coming to know the Lord and 25 people coming to know the Lord, that extra 16 people, well, that's huge, right? So we would love to have you in the 24toDouble program. As I said earlier, everything you need to know about 24toDouble is on this page. And if you do have a question that we don't answer, just reply to any of our emails and we'll be glad to answer those for you. And we hope to be able to see you in the 24toDouble program soon. Thanks.